We've got, there we go. So Linda Coogan Byrne is an award-winning and highly acclaimed PR consultant and convener for diversity and inclusion. Saying that?
You are indeed.
Okay, brilliant. And you're working with artists from across the UK and Ireland. And in addition to all of this, you now host your own podcast, the Why Not Her podcast, which I've been listening to. I would encourage anyone tuning in today to check out the Why Not Her podcast. There's some great discussions on there with some people. So is there anything I've left out there, Linda,
No, you're
that I should
fine.
have included?
You're
Strings to your bow, and I know you've got your fingers in lots of pies and you are a busy person, and I just wanted to make sure I did, because 10 pages long at this stage. I mean, you do a lot of different work. So can you start off by just telling us a bit about yourself and how you kind of got into the business?
Yeah, I like from school, I was always into art and music and was in a few different bands. When I finished my Leaving Cert, I moved to Galway and studied as a luthier, which is someone that makes Renaissance stringed instruments, so harps, guitars. I joined other bands when I moved there and just really threw myself into the 360 of the music kind of scene and the making of instruments, the writing of songs. And then I started booking in stuff for bands. And then by default, I ended up just being kind of a PR person for the bands that I'd played with and I'd got to know. And I ended up like running a lot of stuff in Galway when I was there. I was 19 at the time. And then I came back to County Meath, where I'm from. And I was playing a gig one night in the Mez, which was a really cool bar in Dublin. Still is there, but it was a really cool bar for discovery of new artists.
Yeah, I remember the Mez well.
Great bar. And we were playing a gig and there was a lot of A&R. We were doing a support act gig and I was the guitarist and the lead singer wasn't around that night. So the lads were like, "Get up and sing there, Linda." And I wasn't the singer in the band. So anyway, I got up and sang the songs. And afterwards, the A&R people came up and they were like, "Look, really like what you're doing. We work, some of the guys worked with Brittany and Samantha Mumba and stuff." And they were like, "Oh, we'd love to sign you." And anyway, I ended up chatting to them and ended up spending a good bit of time with them over the months that followed when they were kind of pursuing a record deal with me. And I learned a lot about the music industry during that time. And I kind of went, you know what, I actually loved the music industry side of this. I don't want to be signed because I wasn't the lead singer anyway, but thanks. And I just kind of made friends in that period. And then at the end of that, when I finally said no to sign the contract, I started my own PR company. And the rest is kind of history. Like I just, didn't really have any formal kind of training or go to college to study it or anything. It was just, I knew a lot of people and I knew a lot of people in radio and TV and stuff from having done the scene myself. And so that's how I kind of set upon a path of working in the industry side of things.
You make it sound so easy. I mean, that can't have been easy at all. And very, very impressive, all the work that you do. And just having read your reports over the last few days, I'm blown away by kind of, the work that you do. And yeah, it's fantastic. So I suppose for the purposes of kind of those watching and listening, who might not be familiar with Why Not Her, which is just one of the strings to your bow. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about the work that Why Not Her does?
Yeah, sure. But just from being in the industry for such a long time, like about 20 years, it was always apparent the kind of disparity between who's played on radio, who's on gig lineups, if you're at a festival, if you're even backstage. Like it was predominantly men, predominantly white men. I didn't really see people of color. I didn't see many women. I didn't see artists of diversity. And that was always kind of in my mind. And then as COVID kind of happened last year, I had taken a trip from London to Ireland to see my niece. It was her 18th birthday party. And that was the week of March 13th. And I ended up getting stuck in my sister's for 5 months because the country went on lockdown. So in that kind of period, I went, well, the industry has after been decimated. Like, you know, all the work that everyone had lined up was kind of put on the back burner. So I just thought it was the right time to look into the data and to just see, you know, what, I wonder what it actually is like. And a lot of my staff had said, you know, I think this is an issue. And they had said it to me over the months kind of leading up to that point. And they had kind of wanted to address it to radio. And I said, no, don't, because you're working very close to radio. And I don't think that would be a good idea. I didn't want my company to be affected. So yeah, so I kind of went, yeah, look, I'll look into it. So I did. And the data was really, really striking. It was very, very, very startling. I didn't realize it was that bad. I mean, I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was predominantly 85% male artists dominating the airwaves in Ireland. Similar in the UK and similar in Northern Ireland as well. And it was just, yeah, it was just kind of like, wow. So I got my friend and former client, Anya Tyrrell, who's a folk singer, Irish folk singer, who actually left Ireland and immigrated over to Australia, where she does very, very well. And the reason why she left is because she didn't really have any, you know, platforms available to her or opportunity here. Whereas when she went to Australia, as many Irish artists have done, she has done very well. So yeah, so she helped me with the graphic side. And we did up the report and we launched it in June last year, like not kind of knowing what way it would be taken, but it, you know, it trended on Twitter. It, you know, was featured in all different news platforms, and like musicians were just in uproar about it. And yeah, so it just kind of led us to do reports in the UK. We're working on one in the US at the moment. But yeah, so it just really blew up. I don't think we were kind of aware of what would happen, but because it affects so many people, it just went viral. And yeah, I think we're nearly at 130 million views of the reports now. So it's pretty insane. So yeah,
that is insane. Well, I was going to ask, like, what was that moment where you thought to yourself, okay, this needs to be done? You've mentioned that, you know, lockdown played a part in that, you know, you had staff that were kind of, you know, highlighting it and saying, look, there's a huge gender disparity here and something to be done about it. But for you personally, was there like a kind of a light bulb moment where you were like, okay, enough is enough. I need to do this, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get people on board to help me with this, and we're just going to, you know, for it. Like, what was that moment where you were like, okay, yeah, somebody has, looks like it's going to have to be me.
Yeah, no, I think it was just, you know, I don't have children, but I have nieces, and you know, we get to her birthday party. Like, she's a musician, she's brilliant, but she's not going to do anything in her career unless these changes happen, because I've seen it like for the last 2 decades where women just don't go anywhere in Ireland in music, like, you know, and I think that just kind of being home and being around, then I was just in my sister's. I stayed in my sister's for the first lockdown. So for 5 months I was with my other 2 nieces, and they're just like, oh, they're so funny, but kind of just going, you know what, it would be a terrible injustice if they too grow up, because I was teaching Leah the ukulele and stuff when I was at home, and I was like, if she grows up and she Peter next door or David down the road or whatever, like, you know, it's just not right. It's not okay. So I just said, you know, I think I need to do this. So that was really the deciding factor, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't just one report. I mean, you've done a number of reports focusing on Irish radio, Northern Irish radio, UK radio, and also the charts as well. So if kind of in the simplest terms, if you could kind of take us through the first report and then kind of what followed and changes you saw, say between 2019 and 2021.
Yeah, I mean, the first report we focused on over 30 Irish stations. It was like 27 commercial stuff focused on, you know, music that were the birth stations in Ireland for artists that would have led them on to, you know, have successful careers, being booked at gigs, playing festivals, getting endorsement deals, advertisement deals. And we just focused on them and the heavy rotation playlists. And what we discovered was there was just very, very few women on it, and LGBTQIA artists, like there was none. And it was, you know, there was one Black artist with Soleil, and then all the guys were like, you know, Dermot Kennedy, Niall Horan, you know, Robert Grace, all the kind of, you know, and it was the same, and it's the same this year as well. We're about to release an annual report, and it's the exact same artist. But yeah, so we just kind of seeing, you know, this is very, very clear. It's a very clear issue. So we took the data, and I think it's important when you're doing anything with regards to social change that you don't lead with opinion, because if you have data is factual, it's there, it's not your views, it's totally unbiased. So yeah, so we kind of led with that, and it kind of opened a lot of doors for the conversation to continue and for the conversation to be you know, evolved upon. And from then we were asked to do the UK, and then we did Northern Ireland, and the same kind of model. And it was just taking a very deep look at how the radio stations chose people to be played on the playlist, why they did. Like a lot of radio stations said, oh, it's the label's fault as to why there's so many male artists, or oh, it's what we play in the charts, or you know, what we play is what's in the charts. And the most ridiculous excuses, like men make better music, you know, women don't write good music. And I was kind of saying, well, Ruth Ann, you know, writes for Niall Horan, she's written for Avicii, she's written for John Legend, she's written for Britney Spears, she has 3 billion streams worldwide on Spotify, she's a Grammy nominated writer, and an exceptional musician. So yeah, so it was just debunking all this feedback that we were getting from radio, and it was just very alarming that the response that we were getting, and the response that we continue to get from Irish radio specifically, is just very, very puzzling as to why they're so reluctant to make the change towards parity and inclusion. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I want to talk to you a bit about that. And it's for me as well, having, you know, grown up in Ireland and moving to England and then ending up working in radio in England, I was always a little bit, I suppose, for want of a better term, a little bit embarrassed about the radio in Ireland because, well, you know, in fairness, we're a much smaller country. There's less radio stations and there's less music, you know, and musicians, and you know, but I always felt whenever I came home and I was in the car and I turned the radio on, it was always the same artists. I mean, they were still, you know, they'd still be playing Westlife and, you know, the Cranberries, all great bands, don't get me wrong. But like, you know, I was always very frustrated that new artists, not just, you know, female, non-binary, BiPoc, but, you know, male artists as well, just new artists. I was like, why aren't they playing this band? They're unbelievable. And then, you know, there was maybe 1 or 2 DJs that would really kind of push the boat out and say, okay, you know, I'm, you know, we're playing new and alternative music. But, you know, for the majority of people who aren't in the industry and would just get in their car and turn on the radio, you know, what they were receiving was the same old thing that we've been listening to for the last 20, 30 years, you know. And when it comes to female artists as well, you know, it's always, you know, Sinead O'Connor, the Cranberries, Samantha Mumba, you know, stuff that I grew up with. And it's like, give me something new. We're not short of new and, you know, great music. So, you know, I suppose, why do you think that is? Why is that the case in Ireland?
I have no idea. That's why we call the campaign "Why Not Sure," because we don't know. We haven't got a solid answer. All we've had is excuses. Like, I mean, I've spoken to DJs and heads of music, and you know, I can't name the DJs or the stations, but I've had responses like, well, Imelda May is a little bit long in the tooth to be releasing music, isn't she? You know, and then I've had other ones going, oh, well, say Luann Parr, this would be on like kind of country folk, you know, well, I mean, what age is she anyway? And, you know, from ageism to sexism to, can you send over a photograph of what they look like? And I'm like, you have the MP3 or the WAV. Why do you need a photo. You know, things I've never been asked, or my colleagues and staff have never been asked about male artists. DJs will get back and go, can you send a photo of that female artist? All the time, standard. And it's just really kind of alarming. And then, you know, well, women don't really write good songs. Like, women kind of moan, they're kind of moany. And our listeners prefer to listen to the male voice. I'm kind of like, well, if you're curating your playlist and it's only going to be Dermot Kennedy, Gavin James, Niall Horan, and these artists, of course they're going to ring in and keep requesting what they're hearing, because you're creating the culture of what they want to hear. So they didn't quite get that. Yeah, it's just been crazy. And then, like, some, you know, other DJs are like, Linda, you're feeding us to the wolves. Like, what are you doing? And how dare you? And then, like, other stations have been like, you know, take down that data. We're not comfortable with that being up, and they don't want transparency. It's just been really alarming, because we haven't had that in any other place where we've covered the report. And I mean, the UK, like, we The Guardian won the exclusive there, and you know, it was just literally the day that we went live. We had Bauer, we had BBC, we had Global, we'd all the different major companies in radio in the UK make statements and pledges that they change, and they have like total 360 change. Like, you know, a lot of the stations, some of them are still behind, but the majority of radio in the UK have massively changed. But Ireland is like, who does she think she is? You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know why. I don't know.
Wow. Well, hopefully we'll try and get to that at some point. I mean, these discussions, hopefully we'll someday have an answer to why not her, you know?
Yeah.
Where do you think the responsibility lies when it comes to airplay? I mean, is it the record labels? Is it the radio pluggers? Is it the heads of the station? Is it the listeners? Where does the responsibility lie in terms of who gets the airplay?
Yeah, I think it's like, to whom does the accountability lie? Because it's not just a responsibility, it's an accountability as to how culture is shaped. And radio is, and I think it will continue to be the main point, the main platform point and precipice of where artists' careers break. And it lies within the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. And it lies within, because they hand out the radio licenses, and the radio stations, the CEOs of the radio stations, the playlisting team, and the DJs to speak up and say, well, there's something not right here. I mean, you could tune into any radio station, like last year, like, you know, 2FM, 98 FM, Spin, any of them, and you would hear 8 or 9 male voices and then 1 female voice. 8 or 9 male voices, 1 female voice. And it was literally like, I used to be in the car driving going, like, what the hell? And then when you'd say to them, they were like, oh, but that's just like, that's what we've been sent in. But then I know all of the amazing Orla Gartland, Ruth Ann, Soleil, you know, Erica Cody, and, you know, everyone thinks that Soleil and all these bands only have one song. They've loads of songs. They've released loads of songs after there's one song that one radio station played. So yeah, it feels like, you know, there was a time when, you know, Soleil was the kind of hottest thing, and then it was like Soleil, like Loa, and then it was, you know, Erica Cody got a few plays, and that was enough. That was enough. Like, you should be happy with your lot. Like, we played one woman and she got in the limelight for a few months, and that is it, you know. And it was just like, and then if you go across into the non-binary area, if you go across into like the LGBTQIA, radio don't know what the hell to do then. They're just like, well, as a specialist, you know, I mean, what do we do? And it shouldn't matter where the origin of the music comes from. If it's a good song, if it's viable, if it's commercial, if it fits a remit on a radio station, it should be played. It shouldn't be, what does the woman look like, or what do they look like, or is it a they, is it a he, is it a she? Who cares? Like, who cares? It's about the music. And yeah, so that's a big issue that we're faced with. And I think that the accountability, of course, lies with the licensee holders, who are the radio stations, and those that give it, who are the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland, who we have been in touch with, and we're actually starting to train them into diversity and inclusion. So, and they're becoming the new media commission as well in the next 2 years, which is going to hopefully lead to a lot of change in the broadcasting area in Ireland, both online, offline, on radio, TV, film. So the fact that we have a direct, you know, we're going to try and retrain their minds. Hopefully it works. But yeah, that's where the accountability lies.
Yeah. And going back to the data, or the data, whichever you
Yeah,
prefer to say, I suppose, can you talk a little bit about how you collated that? You said you used something called Radio Monitor, which I
yeah,
hadn't actually heard of before.
yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so you have, like in Europe, Radio Monitor would be the key platform, and then in the US there's about 2 or 3 other platforms that's used. And basically, they are a data collective company where every time, so say you're an artist, you're releasing a song, you have an ISRC code assigned to the song, you have all your beta assignments to the song, and every time a radio station plays your song, for every minute, for every play, you get a royalty. IMRO, or whatever collection society or whatever country you're from, will collect on your behalf as an artist, and that's how you as an artist make revenue. The radio stations, if they're playing Beyonce or Rihanna or whoever like is hot at the moment, obviously that's going to drive listeners, and then they'll have the discovery platform on their stations as well, where they start playing artists, and then they break artists as well, because they will have that established listenership. So as that kind of increases, whatever, it's just really about how you kind of structure that release pattern, and then how the artist's career is shaped from that moment on, and how the radio stations assign the plays, and that's how the whole system kind of operates, and how it kind of runs, and how the clog kind of works, and it's all an ecosystem. And then whoever's played on the radio stations then get booked at the festivals and get advertisement deals, and it just goes on and on. But again, if it's the case where that system is just completely ran and fueled from white cis male, it churns out as to who's played on the festival lineups, and who appears in TV shows, and who appears in advertisements and endorsement deals, and it's quite repetitive, and that's what the big issue is.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to people's livelihoods at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Airplay equals, as you said, like bookings equals gigs equals revenue equals putting food
Yeah.
on the table. Like it's
Yeah.
not, it's so much more than just, I want my song played on the radio.
Yeah.
It's somebody's career and livelihood, and something they've put a lot of time and love into.
Yeah.
So, I suppose for those watching, just off the top of your head, give us a few of the most sort of surprising stats that came out of the data you collated, and with Radio Monitor. I mean, give us a few shockers that will kind of hopefully make us all sit up, because I have to say, as somebody working in radio myself, I was really taken aback by the stats.
Just one artist, like Soleil was the only Black and female artist in high rotation in Ireland in an entire year. Now, if we were to go back 5 years, she's probably the only female artist in a 5-year period that was played on Irish radio in heavy rotation. And that's startling. Like, I mean, if you say, like, so in terms of figures and stats, like, so you say Dermot Kennedy is what we discovered is Dermot Kennedy is the most played male artist from Ireland, and Soleil is the most played female artist from Ireland. And he has over 556% more plays and impacts than Soleil does. So that's 550, that's over 5 times the opportunity that a Black female artist has, and a female in general has. And that is massive. Like in terms of socioeconomic impact on female artists, artists of color versus male artists, and if you go down like from the top, like 20 most played artists across radio, 85% of them is, white cis male artists. 4% are collaborative, 11% are female. And it's just, you're looking at the stats and you're kind of thinking, how is that actually possible? Like, how is that possible? Like, there's no way that's true. And then, you go to the charts, and that's what we did the chart report then, because every radio station were going, we only play what's in the charts. And then we discovered that there's loads of women in the charts. They just still don't play them. Like, I mean, Imelda May recently was the first female artist from Ireland to get a #1 position in a 5-year period. Lisa Hannigan was the last, 2016. Mm-hmm. And Imelda May is signed to the same record label, Universal. So that's one debunked box ticked, because radio stations, we only play what the major labels send us. No, they don't. We only play what's in the charts. No, they don't, because Imelda May was #1. And the week that Imelda May went number one, she was played less than 100 times across Irish radio. And the majority of them plays were actually RTÉ Radio 1. Like very few other stations played her. And the week that she became number one, Dermot Kennedy knocked her off the position with an album that he brought out 2 years previous, because he got over 1,400 plays on just one song. He got thousands of plays that week, but just the one song from an album that he released put him back in the number one position in the album charts when he didn't even have an album out. It was 2 years old. Whereas Imelda had a brand new album, was pushing it everywhere, was on Jules Holland, was on loads of different radio, TV shows in Britain. But Ireland didn't give a absolute damn. And that's what's really worrying, because they've said all these excuses, but now we know that that's not true. You know, some artists are signed to major labels, they're still not being played. Imelda May went number one, she still wasn't played. So what's the issue? Is it because she's over 30 and she's a woman? You know, I mean, is that really a big issue? Is that a good enough reason not to play a woman's music? It's crazy.
Oh, it is bonkers. Like, did any of this surprise you? You know, having played in bands yourself and made music and worked in marketing and PR. Yeah. Yeah,
of course it surprised me. I never knew. Oh, I didn't know it was going to be this bad. Nobody does. Because I mean, take for instance, I think the last time I seen Charlene even was in Output a few years ago, and the likes of Roe and all these amazing female artists where, you know, people were talking about them. But that's what the industry does. It builds up artists, like women artists and diverse artists. They're like, yeah, they're going to be hot. And then they narrow it down to, well, we can only sign one. So then the artists are battling it out against one another, the female artists and the diverse artists. So they're battling it out. Meanwhile, 10 male artists that are white can be signed just like that because they're good. But when it comes to the female artists, you know, there was Soak, there was Roe, there was a few artists I remember, and everyone was like, oh, they're great. And then it was like at the industry then after the after shows, like the after parties, it was like, but who are they going to sign? Which one? You're kind of like, and I just wanted to wrap this cotton wool around the artists that I've seen. And I remember having a few drinks and talking to a few, because I was so emotional at the time, because I knew what was ahead, and I knew what was ahead was imminent failure for them, because, and not to say that they're failed artists, but I knew that the bubble would be burst very quick for them, because the bullshit hype that was built up, I knew that was just going to dissipate very, very quickly. And it's like, how do you protect female artists like this? How do you protect LGBTQIA artists? How do you say, look, you need to really be careful where you're going, and don't trust these people that are just filling your head with this. And it's so, I'm even getting goosebumps thinking about it's just so upsetting to see that. But with male artists, there's not really that much there's more camaraderie. Hey, yeah, you're doing good. Yeah, so are you, dude. Deadly, you know. But when it's women, it's like, that bitch going take my slice of the pie, you know. And that shouldn't be the way it is. It should be yes, let's all work together, let's all grow together and rise together. And it's a very different scene and environment for female artists, and that's really sad, you know. And artists of color, it's very sad.
Yeah. And you mentioned there two Northern Irish artists, Roe and Soak, and you also mentioned the fact that Imelda May has been getting, you know, a bit of support from the BBC with Jules Holland and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know, how does the stats compare with the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the rest of the United Kingdom? What were the big differences, or were there any similarities, or
same, trends? The same. I mean, we did all the stations in Northern Ireland, and BBC got back to us and said, look, we'd prefer to do our own data and send it to you. So they asked us to take it down. So that was no problem. No other station ever asked us to do that, but I was like, oh, okay, no problem. So we're still waiting for that data to come in. So I can't really comment on BBC until it comes in.
That's BBC Ulster and
Foyle.
Radio Foyle. Okay.
So so that was that. So I can't really comment on that. But the likes of, you know, Belfast 89, Blast, Cool, Downtown. Downtown was actually all right. Downtown was 50% male, 30% female, 20% collaborative. So collaborative means a male and a female singing on the same song. What was Drive was 80% male. U105 was, I think, nearly 80%, 90%. So they weren't good. You know, they really weren't good. Downtown Country was parity, which was great. But a lot of them they weren't good. It was definitely between 5 to 15, 20% women across the way. And then in the UK, it was very similar. But as I said, it took the UK a very short length of time to turn that around. Like we've seen, BBC Six, we've seen new heads of music come in. We've seen new heads of music come in at Radio 1 Extra. We've seen like lots of diversity, even within I did the Output festival there a while ago, and we were just talking about this with some of the DJs there, and it was just like, there's a lot of changes, a lot of DJs are leaving, a lot of DJs are switching over, and but then I was looking at it going, well, it's like Tom Robinson, like he had 4 shows on one station. I'm like, dude, like seriously, would you not have thought this before, where you would have been like, well, hang on, maybe a woman should have this, or an artist or a presenter of color. I can share these 4 shows that I have, but that doesn't come into the equation when it's men. And I had this chat with him over the phone. I had it live, like, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And then, it was the same thing as well. But like, and they play a lot of male artists as well. And I was kind of like, would you not think this, your listeners request male artists because that's all they hear on your show or on your station? And that's a huge thing, and you have to change that. And it's the duty of the station, especially the likes of, say, RTE and BBC, because they're national stations. They are, they're funded stations. It should be where they're looking at, they're reflecting society. And the fact that they weren't was very problematic. And, in some areas it goes against constitutional rights, like this Article 23 of the EU rights. And it's that we all should be treated as equal and have the same opportunities and whatnot. And that just was not the case. So, there's a lot of things to kind of to look in, and think, well, this is more than a socio-economic issue. This is like a human rights issue as well. Like there's 2 decades of women that have just been blocked off the air. And you just said Sinead O'Connor does get played, and the Corrs and the Cranberries, they're the only female artists in 20 years of Irish radio that have recurrent plays. There, that's it. That's it.
And how did? No, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so it's just so it's kind of, you're just kind of going, wow, I mean, and that's not to say none of them they're all brilliant, like they're all great. And Laura Isibor, Samantha Mumba got plays, like a few plays over the duration of a few years, but nothing, like they're just off the grid completely, and that's, again, I don't have any, I'm still as gobsmacked because I've just looked at 85 stations, because when we did the first report, people were kind of saying, oh, you haven't looked at community radio, you haven't looked at local radio, or even some college radio. I think it's unfair, because I think we are better than some of the regionals and nationals. That is not the case. That is not the case. They are just as bad, and they're going to get a very big shock when I release this report now at the end of June, because and I literally had emails, phone calls, like, how dare you leave us out? And I was like, I'll include you in the next report. I'm only one person, and because it was only me at the time, and Anya did the artwork, so it was literally like, it was a gargantuan job. But now there's a few of us on the team, so we were like, let's do all the stations and see what way it is. There's only 3 stations and 85 that are at gender parity.
Wow.
3 stations.
And how does regional compare to national, for instance? I was looking at the stats, and as a Mayo woman, I was quite pleased to see that Midwest Radio were doing better than many of the others, even though they're still only at 20% female. I mean, they were topping the regional stats. So, is regional doing slightly better than national? Would you say that? Or
no. Okay. Not now. No, I mean, now we've seen, like, so Beat FM are regional, 98 FM, or sorry, Spin 103 in Dublin, who's one of the biggest commercial stations, and RTE2 FM are the only 3 stations in Ireland who have reached gender parity and diversity. So they include people of colour on the playlist, they include LGBTQIA artists, and they include women. And the rest of the regionals are more or less the same, like 10, 15%, 5%. Hasn't really changed. And that's with so much exposure of the report. Like, I don't think we could have got any more exposure than we got, like, and it's still, they don't care.
Yeah. And like, can you say that, the stats in your reports are true and accurate, that, you know, they are an accurate reflection of what is being played, because I was surprised to see quite a few stations up there, both national, regional, you know, commercial and public service broadcasters, some of them with the chart saying 100% male. I mean, is that true?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, if we look at
that's mind-blowing to me, you know. I can't even imagine that being possible. So like,
if we look at like FM 104, like they're 5 years in a row, 100% male, 100% white cis male artists on their top rotation playlist, 5 years in a row. And
wow.
you know, it's again, like I've had stations blacklist me. I've had, you know, just, it's been so sad. And this is important as well, because a lot of people think that it is just men running the stations. It isn't. Like there's, you know, 5 or 6 women that are running some of the biggest radio stations in Ireland. And internalized misogyny is so rife. Like they're like, what are you talking about? Like we just play what comes in. And I've actually had probably more loggerheads, even though it's completely unnecessary to even have had to be in that situation. Because all I was doing was asking a question like, why aren't you playing women and artists of color? Why is there nobody with a disability on your playlist? Why, like there's zero artists that have any sort of disability on any playlist in the UK, Ireland, and Northern Ireland. None. So they just don't exist in the world. They just don't exist, which is horrific. So you're kind of going, what's the story? So it's both women and men, like, you know, that are kind of going, oh, it's just, this is the way it is. And yeah, I don't know. Is it the church and state? Is it because we're so deeply entrenched in how that deep misogynistic, you know, women are secondary, men are primary, the main functioning thing in society? And, you know, we did a look at the hours of power on political and current affairs radio as well, behind the mic. And, you know, 89% of radio shows from the time of 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. across regional radio station in Ireland is male presenters. And they are forming the policies that we know and that we've come to learn about in Ireland. Like they are given other, you know, people like male politicians, male speakers, time on air. So it's men speaking about abortion, men speaking about, you know, maternity leave, paternity leave, men speaking about even issues that don't concern them, but they're the ones that are making the choices for women. That are, instead of having women on to speak about women's issues, they're having men on to speak. And we see it in COVID, like the COVID women's group have highlighted it, where if you look at RTE, BBC, if you look at anything, Sky News, anything, the panels are predominantly men, they're predominantly white men, just talking about issues like, you know, the family home issues and you know, issues concerning like kids' clothes. And like when we couldn't go shopping to buy kids' clothes, and it was like men talking about, they're not even the buyers in the household, it's usually the mothers. So you're just kind of looking at this and you're kind of going, this is so bizarre. But then if you look at where the formation of that, the policies and how, you know, politicians get the platforms that they do, it does originate on the exposure that they get. And if you look at the landscape, the political landscape in Ireland especially, it's predominantly homogenized, you know, and that's, again, that's a huge result as to the absolute disparity across current affairs programming on Irish radio. If women aren't seen or heard, you can't be something if you can't see it. Like,
yeah. And did anything kind of change between, say, 2019 and 2021? You know, for better or for worse, you know, did any stations or any DJs say, Linda, I didn't realize this was the case. We're going to make a real effort now to kind of tip the scales so that they're a bit more balanced?
Yeah, no, nobody said that to me. But we have seen, you know, 2FM, it took them 9 months to change and they're at parity. So well done to them. We've seen Spin, like I've spoken to Gavin Ward, who's amazing guy. He's the head of music in Spin. And, you know, he, like, we DM'd each other on Instagram and stuff. And we had been emailing and stuff. And he was like, this is great, you know, and thanks a million for showing us. And they've done amazing work and they're very vocal about it. So I can speak about it openly. Beat FM have done very, very good. They're at parity as well. Tip FM and Clare FM, who were 100% male. They kind of got on, and I went on their show and we talked about it. And it was like a sparring match. I swear to God, it was hilarious. It was so funny. But they thought if they got me on air, they could break me down. But I was kind of like, you can't really break down the data. Like, this is a fact. So that kind of, it was interesting, but I didn't think that would turn around, but they did. And Stephen Keogh, a good guy in Tip FM, he was like a little bit reluctant at the start, didn't kind of think it was their fault, thought it was the labels, thought it was the charts. And I sent him all the data, like we sent it to him, sent the core data, and he was like, okay, we're going to start changing. But that was literally only a few weeks ago. So we won't see that reflected in the last year, but hopefully we'll see it reflected in the year to come. So that's it. That was 5 stations in Ireland that actually got back. The rest of them ignored us, didn't do anything.
Okay. And what about in Northern Ireland and the UK? Was there any change?
Oh, the UK was great. Like, the UK was brilliant. So BBC, like all the BBC network were very positive. Bauer were very positive, who owned a lot of the commercial stations. And Bauer are actually, interestingly, after coming in and taking over Today FM and Communicorp Wireless in Ireland, which is fantastic, because they have a strict policy on gender equality, diversity and inclusion, and they just literally took over them stations. We're already starting to see some DJs go, which is fantastic, and changing, because it wasn't working. And that's no kind of dig at different. It's just, if something isn't working, it has to change. You can't just keep someone in there for their ego. Yeah, it has to change. And with evolution and developing something, people have to change, and it's simple as that. So we're seeing a lot of changes happen already, and it's wonderful. It's a really good indication as to how much they want to kind of give to this and go, yeah, look, we're ready to change. And we've seen the data, and it's all because of the data. Like we've spoken to a lot of stations, we've spoken to a lot of heads, and as reluctant as they were, I think the crunch point was with the 20-year chart report, because we debunked everything they said, so they didn't really have anywhere else to turn to. So it was kind of like, well, and we went to political parties, we were talking to the president, we went to the Taoiseach, we went to ministers, we went to the Minister for Arts and Education and Tourism and every other area that she works in. Oh my God. So we've spoken, we went to the leaders, the political leaders, because the radio stations weren't caring. So we went one step up, and we went to as many people as we could. So they have no choice now, they have to change. So, but this is all only kind of more concrete in the last 2 months, I'd say. So again, we won't see that reflected in this annual report. What we'll see in the annual report is the radio stations' reluctance. But in the UK, again, it's really changed. Like, you can see it already, there's a BBC 50/50 project, quality project, which is brilliant. You see a lot of, if you look to the whynother.net, we have I think it's a 6-month review that went up a few weeks ago. And you can just see huge changes. There's a lot has changed in collaborations as well. So the male artists are kind of down, and more collaborations and more female artists. And so it's wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot of change in the UK. The UK were on the ball though. I really didn't have any major issues with the big stations in the UK and the regional stations. Some specialist stations like Planet Rock and Kerrang and stuff like that. I don't think they'll ever change. I hope they do, but I don't know. I don't know whether they will or not. Some stations just don't think that women can create rock music, and we're just kind of going, okay.
Well, I guess it's a much smaller pool, isn't it? Say in Ireland, for instance, every kind of music scene, whether it's in London, Belfast, Dublin, wherever, they're always quite tight knit, and everybody seems to know everybody. And I guess what I kind of want to know is there was a huge reaction after you published these reports, and I mean both positive and negative.
Yeah.
Some people don't like you rocking the boat, and I suppose, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the kind of positive stuff and the support that you got, and the people that might have reached out, but also the trolling that you've experienced online, and not just anonymously but also very publicly. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the trolling. I think you either get used to that and you just put it to one side, or it really affects you. Like I've seen like some of the team be really affected by it, and I've had to kind of ban them from looking at online. Like, you know, I'm only after recently deciding not to be on Twitter anymore myself, because it was just too much. But but yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, but you know, well, anything got to do with social change and trying to rock the boat with the patriarchal system, it's going to be met with apprehension, and it's going to be met with people going, what the hell are you doing? You know, and that's, you know, I was mentally prepared for that. And yeah, I mean, it's the water off a duck's back now, you know, but I'm very aware that it's not that way for other people, and other people on the team have suffered. But you just have to have a good support system. Like, I mean, I've, you know, I have good support and friends and my partner and stuff, like, so I was lucky. But yeah, it can get very difficult. And then you have, you know, the flip side, where I met this amazing people. Like, I was always a fan of Sounding the Feminist, Waking the Feminist, Women on Air, National Women's Council, like these amazing networks of women who are just have wonderful teams, and they're doing great activism over the last few years, who I never taught, like Nadia Khan in the UK, Vic Bain. And it's, you know, it's just been wonderful getting to evolve with them, and you know, I can call them friends now, and you know, we chat a lot, and we work together, and we're all supportive of one another, and that's great to see, because I never had that. Like, I've never had female support in anything that I did in the music industry up until last year. Never did. So all it was just, who does she think she is? Like, oh, I don't really like her, don't know her, but I don't like her. She's a bit mouthy, she's a bit opinionated. And it was just like, oh my God. So this year has been wonderful, and last year, because I found my people. And it's been great, you know, it's been really, really fantastic. And yeah, quite a learning curve.
Yeah, like, just to give everyone watching an example of the kind of stuff you've received. I mean, it's just been kind of, you know, trashy comments on Twitter, but also like really bonkers stuff as well. Like, we were having a chat the other day, and you forwarded me this email, and it shocked me, and it would have, I don't know how I would have felt receiving this, but I'm going to read it out if you're cool with that, Linda. But just so people, you know, kind of get an idea of the kind of, you know, you're totally putting yourself out there and opening yourself up to criticism. But this was just bizarre. Somebody set up a Gmail account called headsuplinda@gmail.com and sent you an email that says, and we don't know who this is from, but it says, "Hi, Linda, just giving you an anonymous heads up and advice as a friend. Everyone in the industry has been talking about you and the activity around increased airplay for female artists. Yes, your views and opinions on this matter are correct, and it is great to see, and I admire you for it. However, having said that, you are stepping on people's toes, and it has gotten to the stage where enough is enough. The word is that if you keep stepping on people's toes, and it is pushing into the stages where music directors, stations, and other outlets are going to blacklist you and ignore you, and this will result in your clients receiving no airplay or coverage. Speaking to a lot of DJs and jocks, they have heard enough about all this. This is a friendly heads up, and I admire you for it, but I also do not want to be involved either. Take from this what you like, but as I said above, it's just a heads up." I mean, what did it feel like to receive that and get that into your inbox?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I've received loads of stuff like that from DJs that I know. I just can't publish it, but I did publish that because it was from an anonymous account. So I was at that stage, I was like, okay, well, I might as well publish this one, because people can actually see the bullshit I have to put up with. But that wasn't, like, I've received worse. But yeah, I mean, you're kind of going, really? Like, you know, I've had people that I know for years have rang me, and I've met up with them and kind of said, "Linda, I think you should stop now. Like, I really do think I think it's like, enough is enough." Like, and that has been, wow. Or like, you know, you're going to destroy your career. And this is people I know. You're going to destroy your career. And I think you just need to back down. You know, you think you've raised the voice a little bit, and now I don't think it's going to change. I think all that's going to happen is what's happened. And I think you just need to focus on your work, and you know, you're going to, you know, you're not going to do yourself any favors, and you're talking too much, and it's counterproductive. And like so much. I've been kind of going on the other end because I know these people for over a decade. I'm kind of going, what? And this is men and women, and you're just kind of, and people that I would have actually at certain times looked up to even, and I'm kind of like, number one, why did I ever look up to this person? And secondly, it was kind of like, really? Like, wow, this is amazing. And then, you just learn to kind of just take it on the chin, like,
Yeah. Well, it was quite threatening as well, though, saying, your artists are going to be blacklisted.
I've had DJs say that to me. I have been blacklisted from radio. I'm still blacklisted from some stations. Like, yeah. I don't, like, my staff have not been affected and my company has not been affected because I've kept it very separate. But if I say send something from somebody and send it to the radio, they won't, but they'll get it if my staff send it in. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want any clients to be affected or anything. So that's why I would not let my colleagues get involved. They're like, oh, we'll get involved. Like, no, you won't. Keep Good Seeds separate. And yeah, still continues. Even with some stations that are doing well now, they still don't like the fact that I had to push them to do that. Mm-hmm. So, but look, that's the price that you have to pay. And if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. I don't care. Like, all I care about is that it changes and that, in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, that, we can drive in the car, no matter where we are in the UK or Ireland, or we're going to do the US next year, that we can just confidently say, okay, well, that was a good song by a female artist, and then they're going to play a male artist or somebody non-binary or whatever. And I just wanted to get to that stage where it's just inclusive. And I do believe that we can, like, with the reactions that we've had, and with the amount of people that have supported us in the media, it does lead us to believe that people do want to change. And yeah, I'm determined to continue on. I'm just getting started. This has only been the first year of me doing this, and it's like this, putting my foot in the water. Like, I'll be swimming in no time.
Yeah. So, and you are getting support from, like, the likes of Women's Work, for instance. I hope you feel like there are kind of people,
yeah, totally,
that are kind of wrapping their arms around you and saying, we support what you do. And you've had a lot of female non-binary artists get in touch and have given you quotes for the report.
Yeah,
say,
brilliant.
You are spot on. But have any men reached out to you to say, fair play, Linda, you're doing the good work, keep it up?
No, like, not really. Like, we put out because we did this statement thing when we did the reports we got in touch with all the major artists, and none of them would do anything. None of the male artists would comment. But we had, like, the wonderful Connor from Villagers. He sent us in a lovely quote and what he feels how important equality and diversity is. And we've had some, musicians, but they wouldn't have been the major, like, musicians that are played heavily on radio. They'd be kind of the up and coming male musicians that know that the scene belongs to everybody and not just them. But no, we haven't had any of the major artists. No, we haven't had any, or anyone really, like, of note in the industry that's male. No, we haven't.
Yeah. Well, to quote Sarah from Pillow Queens, which was one of the quotes in your report that I kind of resonated with the most, and had the pleasure of speaking to the Pillow Queens on Friday night, and they were just fantastic. So anybody watching, check out that session. But she said, I think we've always known there was a huge disparity between the sizes of the platforms given to men versus those given to women, but to see it laid out like this is incredibly eye-opening, even to me as a woman in the industry. And I have to say, as myself, as a woman working in the industry, and somebody working predominantly in radio as well, I found it incredibly eye-opening and depressing, and it made me angry. And I want to know, and we're going to finish on this question, I want to know, what can individuals like myself, particularly people working in radio, what can we do to address this gender disparity?
Stop seeing through your own lens. Like, we all have internalized bias. Every single one of us has internalized bias, from people that don't believe racism exists because they have suffered from classism and they just believe it's a classist issue, to people that, I had a consultation the other day, and at the end of it, one of the lads in the band went, "Hey, just want to ask you a question because I know you're doing all this gender stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, fire ahead." And he said, I have 3 sisters, and they're probably better than me on the piano. Like, they're brilliant musicians. All of them were trained. All of them reached major grades, and but like, I'm the only one that went on to do something in music. And like, so there are women out there that just choose not to. And I said, that's your lens, like, that's your view. I said, if you adjust that lens and look at it from their perspective was they didn't see other women making it. I said, you had Coldplay, one of the biggest bands in the world, of like Chris Martin sitting there at a piano and doing anything, and he could be amazing. And a lot of other male pianists, because he was talking about piano players. And I said, well, who did your sisters have? And he couldn't say. And I said, that's my point. Like, I said, if you can't see it, you can't be it. I said, so if you adjust your lens, I said, and you just take your own bias away and just look at it as that. And the same goes for like festival advancers and festival organizers. They don't put enough wheelchair access because none of them on the committee is in a wheelchair. So they don't look at it from that perspective. So that's why it's so important to have diversity and inclusion, even at the base root of committees, of anything like that. Because if there's somebody there not speaking up for that, the minority groups or diverse groups or people of color or women, it's not going to be addressed. It's not going to be brought up because it doesn't affect them. Same way as it didn't affect that chap, because all he seen was his 3 sisters kicked his ass in piano, and he was like, but I'm the one that went ahead and did it. And I'm like, that's because you're white and you're male. He was like a male model. I was like, dude, you could walk down the road and get handed a job, like, because you're privileged. And a lot of the time, people don't want to look at that, we don't have privilege, but you do. So yeah, so I think the main thing is just adjust your lens, your bias. We all have internalized bias. I do, you do, everyone does. And then just, be the change that you want to see. Like, we all live the world ourselves. Like, the world, this whole thing, like, the world evolves around you. Yeah, the world evolves around everybody. Each person, the world evolves around them. That's not a bad thing, but it's how you help other people when you're in the world that matters. So I think just kind of, looking at someone, and if someone's in a bad mood, it's like, well, what happened to them? No, don't just say they're an asshole. They probably had a bad day or something bad, what happened to them, or a bad experience or whatever. So yeah, it's just kind of being patient and just seeing how you can help, like, just start a conversation. Like, this has been like the most powerful tool that we've discovered from doing this campaign. Is like, it started off just me doing a report, and then I have a whole team. Like, we're all equal, we're all in it together, and we're better together, and when we rise together, we all benefit from that. And so I think it's just get involved and reach out. And I wish I had have reached out to women in control and women on air, and all these other women that I was at a distance looking at the last even 10 years, because I didn't think I could be that change. But yeah, something just clicked, and I was like, no, I need to actually put my money where my mouth is, and try to be the change that I want to see. And when you do that, it does happen,
That's cool. I was going to finish on the if you can't see it, you can't be it. But we have had a question in from MK Brennan. Thank you very much for your question. And they ask, what is female representation like in radio management? Can you answer that for us?
No, it's not good. It's not good. Like, there was the woman that's over FM 104. It's a woman that's over FM 104. It's a woman that's over Beat regional. And that was really it in terms of like managerial over a station. There was like 2, 3 female playlisters in the entire radio that we dealt with. But other than that, it was male. It was white male, and white middle-aged to, over 50s to 70s male group, white, that are handling most of the playlist. And then you go to the commercial stations, and it's middle-aged white men. Yeah.
And what would you say?
Not good.
Yeah. And to anyone listening in as well who would say, do you know what, if there's not enough female representation in radio, how can I contribute? Would you have any advice for them on how to kind of be part of the change?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough in that regard, because yeah, again, if they can't see it, how can they think, oh, I want to do that, I want to be something like that? It's just getting involved. Like, if you want to work in radio, the more women that go towards working in radio, the better. But having said that, there has been, and they just get turned down. They literally just get turned down. It's like, no. I mean, I've spoken like on the interesting thing in this campaign is that I've had so many women email and drop us DMs and message us and ring us from radio stations that work in the management side, saying stories about sexism, sexual harassment, in some situations, sexual assault, rape, discrimination. And we're working with the Fair Play Collective and Misha Fosta, which is Australia for Me Too campaign, because there are a lot of women that have experienced sexual harassment and sexual assault, as in being raped in a radio station, cases, and that was just devastating. Like I have come off Zoom calls in tears, and that's all being handled, but it has to be handled very delicately, and we've been in touch with Catherine Martin and a lot of the ministers about that, and we're hoping to create a safer environment for women in managerial roles and in broadcasting, because it's a huge issue. And the same as for women that are touring, women that are backstage, women that are sound engineers, as well as performers and artists. It is a massive issue, huge. Yeah. It's too big to even go into right now.
Yeah. And also there are so many sessions you can watch back from the Women's Work Festival, from everything from why aren't there enough, female producers, to how to get into marketing and PR. So I would encourage anybody watching this now to check those sessions out on the Oh Yeah Music Centre YouTube page, or Women's Work ni.co.uk, because as you said, you got to kind of be in it to make the change. If you can't see it, you can't be it. So get involved, reach out to Linda. I hope that's okay for me to say that, like, people can reach out to you and ask your advice. And also I work in radio. I do presenting and producing, predominantly for Radio 6 Music, Radio 2 and Radio Ulster, but I'm a freelancer. And if anyone wants to reach out to me on socials, or just on my email, siobhan.mcandrew@bbc.co.uk, if you want to get into radio or find out more about how to work in music and represent artists, please feel free to get in touch. And I just want to finish off by saying thank you so much, Linda, for everything, and for taking the time to talk to us today, and to the Oh Yeah Music Centre, and to Women's Work Festival. What a fantastic weekend. And there's more stuff happening today as well, so check out the schedule, and hopefully we'll all come out of this a bit more well informed, and with a bit of a fire in our belly to make the change we want to see, as you said, Linda. So thank you so much again. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, just thanks a million for everything you guys are doing. And it's just so, I've always had great relations with the OES Centre, and just it's fantastic work that you're doing. I think it's long may it last, and we're all in this together, and it's great that the support infrastructure is there. So fair play to you.
No worries. I am typing in my email address here, so please feel free, anyone, to get in touch. And is it lindacooganbyrne.co.com or .ie? What's your website, Linda?
lindacooganbyrne.com, yeah.
lindacooganbyrne.com. Check it out, and feel free to get in touch with us. So thanks so much to everybody for watching this afternoon. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Linda. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.